57talk.com, Gary Cubetta, Scottsdale, Arizona, back again. Pleasure to introduce Jody Hamilton, the assassin. Jody, pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here, Gary. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I'd like to go back to the early 1970s, All-South Wrestling, Ann Gunk, a kind of a territory lost in time, but a very important territory indeed because it had placement on WTCG, which later became WTBS, the superstation, owned by Ted Turner. Jody, you had wrestled with Georgia Championship Wrestling before Ann Gunk, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Give me, leading up to Ann, tell me a little bit about what the promotion was like at that time.
Well, her husband, Ray Gunk, owned it and ran it, but he had stockholders. And actually the stockholders that were involved in the company actually had more stock in it than he did. So they were, I guess you could have to call them majority stockholders. So when Ray died, the majority stockholders, or the rest of them that was left and everything, they ascended it upon Georgia, because Georgia was a ripe plum, that for the picking, and all the vultures were circling the grave the day of the funeral, for Christ's sake. And that's Ann came into the office, and there sit Eddie Graham and Buddy Fuller and Lester Welch and all that bunch and everything, and they told Ann, all you have to do is go home and we'll send you your royalty checks every week and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that ain't what she found out later. That wasn't what they had in mind, according to what she told me, What they had in mind is just send her home and get her completely out of the picture and everything, then they were just going to take the business. So anyway, she told them all to go to hell, and then that's when she started her own company.
And that was November 24th of 1972. Jody, previously, or even after that, if anyone tried to compete with an NWA promoter, usually they wouldn't be able to get the talent. But Ann was unique in that most of the talent shifted over and went to work for her. Why exactly was that? Why was everyone willing to go against the NWA for this one time?
Because of who was running the NWA at the time. Because Buddy Fuller, Lester Welch, and of course Eddie Graham had a pretty good reputation for drawing money and stuff out of Florida and everything, but he wasn't a well-liked person by most of the talent and so on. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why the most of the talent, with the exception of three people, most all the talent went with Ann.
How was Ann able to get in? Was she friends with Ted Turner? How was she able to get in?
She'd known Ted Turner when Ted Turner was still working for his dad when his dad had the advertising business on the billboards and stuff. Okay. And then she managed a hotel out in Las Vegas and so on, and that's basically where she met Ted, as he came out there to Las Vegas on a couple of trips and everything, and then she ended up back in Atlanta, where she was from anyway, and they became friends and remained friends for years.
When she first took over the slot on TBS, or did she just continue with the slot? Were there two programs on TBS simultaneously?
Oh, yeah.
What time slots were they in?
Oh, God,
was like they
now. I'm not sure I remember, but I think it was. I think the NWA had from 6 to 7, and we have from 7 to 8.
Wow. Boy, that must have been. Now, did you get a lot of pressure? Don't go with Ann. We're going to blackball you. We won't let you back in the NWA, or was it physical?
They knew better than to try to pressure me. They tried to buy me, but they tried to pressure some of the other guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Now.
They even threatened a couple of guys,
They did, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Did you both run? Now, Atlantic City Auditorium was the top spot at the time, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you run like 1 week NWA, 1 week Ann Gunk, or was it a Thursday and Friday night? How did that work out?
No, we ran Tuesday, they ran Friday.
Okay.
Sold out both shots.
So wrestling Atlanta in the early 70s, red hot.
It was in Atlanta, that's for sure.
Now Tom Ernesto, a friend of yours, a partner of yours, was the booker. was he doing a really good job? You know, I don't go back this far as seeing it myself, so I'm just curious. As things developed, obviously the NWA took control again, but was the promotion, it was successful for the first year?
Yeah. Well, you know, Tom was my dear friend and my partner, and he and I were together as a team for 15 years on the road together and so on, and never had a cross word. So I'm not going to say anything bad about Tom.
Yeah.
But everybody makes mistakes, okay? And he made one critical mistake, and that was putting too much, giving too much power to a guy named Thunderbolt Patterson. And Thunderbolt Patterson, then he tried to hold Ann up and tried to extort 25% of the territory from Ann, or he was going to quit and go to the NWA and all that, you know. So, and that was basically kind of the beginning of the end. And then we lost the building in Augusta, and it was a downhill slide from there.
So, Jody, one of the reasons that All South Wrestling was successful the first year was because of Thunderbolt, but also
no. It was because of the talent and because of Ann and because of the way that the things were handled. The talent was still fresh from the NWA, because it was at one time was the NWA talent and everything. But you know what the hell? Small territory. After a year, you get to see the same faces week after week after week after week, and they had basically frozen us out as far as getting a whole bunch of new talent in. I mean, we did manage to get guys like Ernie Ladd, who were strong, independent guys, and so on, and Charlie Cook and a few other guys. But they were here. You know, I mean, they couldn't hold a territory by themselves because there just wasn't enough talent. And when the fans who are used to variety and used to different faces and so on, you know, you very back in those days, you very seldom ever had the same two guys in a main event more than 2 weeks in a row. You know, they might have a return match with some special stipulation between two different guys that had a hell of a match or something. But by the same token, that was a variety, and new blood, new faces, and new blood has always been the lifeblood of wrestling. So that's that's the way they tried to do it, you know. And the guys just plain and simple, the talent got wore out.
Yeah, first of all, I'm looking at the results, and I actually don't see that much Thunderbolt Patterson from these 2 years. So he really wasn't responsible for any type of success. I see him here a little?
Well, there was a lot of weight put on him at a very critical time.
Okay.
And what should have been one of the biggest things for Gunkel and the company and everything never materialized because of the business ethics of Thunderbolt. You know?
Okay, so he was in at an important time, an important angle, and then held the company up.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yep.
And it does seem that the talent got a little stagnant near the end. Now, I've heard that the NWA brought in all types of talent from all across the country.
Well, every promoter around the country was trying to help them out, see? And they stuck together and everything, and that's why Ann put the antitrust monopoly lawsuit on them.
Yeah, and how did that work out?
Well, she got a settlement.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think it ever went to a jury. I think all the NWA people got together and give her a settlement, and then they put Jim Barnett on Ann, and she and Barnett were good friends, and Jim ended up buying her interest, and then he combined her interest with what was left of her interest. He combined them with the NWA that he bought. He purchased both of them.
Jody, a lot of fans look back at the NWA they look at it like those were the great days of wrestling. I've talked to a lot of the boys, and they have almost universal negative things to say about the way the NWA promoters treated the guys. Did you feel that way?
Well, I think I don't think it was the NWA as much as it was individual promoters.
Yeah.
You know, the individual promoters that had the worst reputations, unfortunately, at that particular time, just happened to be NWA promoters. You know. I mean, there wasn't a bigger schnook in wrestling than Roy Shires, but everybody liked the way he paid off because he was a good payoff man. You know, they was willing to put up with his arrogance and his horrible personality because they knew whenever they went into San Francisco they were going to make money.
When you say a good payoff man, is that basically a case of that he'll give you an accurate compensation for the gate?
Give you a larger percentage of the gate than the other promoters do. Yeah.
Were there promoters that definitely just simply shortchanged the guys?
Oh yeah, oh, a lot of them did. A lot of them did.
And
Jim Crockett was one of the good payoff men, and one of the guys that give the wrestlers a fair shake and paid well. That's why Crockett never had any problem getting talent and everything. I'm talking about Jim Crockett Sr. I'm not talking about the kids by any means. And Cowboy Luttrell, before Eddie Graham took over Florida, Cowboy Luttrell was considered an excellent payoff man. Don Owens in Portland was considered an excellent payoff man. You know, Gus Karras in the Midwest, where I'm originally from, and everything was considered an excellent payoff man. But, you know, that was, and Leroy McGurk, before Bill Watts took over, Leroy McGurk was considered a good payoff man. So, anyway, you know, that's, that stigma of the NWA screwing everybody. The only time that the NWA screwed people was when they wanted to get together and gang up on somebody and try to put them out of business. You know, that was the old antitrust monopoly thing. You know, and then they all swore that they were going to sworn allegiance to each other and they were going to stick together and this and that and so on and so forth. But then when Von Erich wanted to steal Houston from Morris Siegel and everything, the good old NWA backed him instead of Morris Siegel, who had been a member of the NWA for years.
So the focus of the NWA really at the end of the day was in case someone tries to come into my territory, these other promoters are going to...
Yeah, we're going to gang up on you and beat the hell out of you.
Yeah. And other than that, it was just basically a situation of protecting each other. Of course, the NWA had a lot of problems over the years.
Well, the NWA's main function was they controlled the NWA champion.
Right.
And then they booked and controlled him, see.
Jody, how popular, how successful were the Assassins as a tag team between what years? I know it's one of the all-time great tag teams. Were there prime years that you and Tom had?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, from 61 when we teamed up here to the late 70s.
How were you able to keep the team fresh for that period of time? You traveled parts of the world. I never saw you, for example, in the World Wrestling Federation. I don't believe you wrestled much in the AWA.
No.
But at the time...
Well, there were plenty of territories back then. I mean, my goodness, look at, and the size of... you could go into the Carolinas and everything, and you could stay for 2 years there and never get worn out. You know, and that's what Tom did when he was there as a single. And he was one of the biggest cards they've ever had there as a single. And then when he and I went back as a team and everything, we worked nothing but the major towns because, quite frankly, we kind of refused to work the small towns because we had so much heat. It was just too damn dangerous, you know, how we had people shooting at us and trying to lynch us and everything, you know. So we didn't work the small towns.
Back in those days, you guys were larger than life, but almost in a negative way. It wasn't like you were celebrities; it was almost like outlaws, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular about the team what made the team so special? Do you think, looking back at it?
Teamwork. We worked as a team. We functioned as a unit, you know. And Tom and I both. Conducted good interviews. We didn't talk down to our opponents. We told people exactly how the land lays and exactly what we intended to do, and then we went out and did it, you know. And we didn't give what's become kind of popular now. We didn't do the hippodrome type interview and everything that make, because nowadays the people will sit there and they'll look at an interview, and as soon as the guy starts talking and everything, it's like it's going to be a 2-minute. If he's got a 2-minute interview, it's going to be a 2-minute hype, and the people pick up on it, and people don't like being hyped, so they it's going to end up being. Nowadays, it's 2 minutes of wasted TV time, which is expensive as hell now anyway, because everybody's sitting there with a remote is going to switch off for a couple of minutes to go find something else until this guy gets through yakking and screaming and hollering and so on. That stuff is passé. They need to do a 180 and go back to doing intelligent interviews.
When you look at the product today, Jody, do you think that a team like the Assassins could get over in Vince's world, or just
we'd be the biggest thing in wrestling today.
Yeah,
we damn were then back then. We were one of them. It was hard to say that. Oh, the Assassins are the biggest team in wrestling, or the Kangaroos are the biggest team in wrestling, because there were so damn many different territories. But the only thing that I can judge our success on is the fact that we were in main event matches. Every territory that we ever went to, and every territory that we ever went to, we drew money, big money. And that's why we had no trouble whatsoever ever getting booked. We even drew a lot of money out there where you're at.
In Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona is one of those places when I was growing up on the East Coast, and I heard a lot of people, how come Arizona doesn't have a territory? And now as I've interviewed people, the great Mephisto, yourself just now, they say that superstar Billy Graham even told me there was a lot of money made in Arizona. What was the promotional situation out here?
The only one time that we worked for it out there was Ernie Mohammed.
Yeah, I've heard about him. Was he part of the NWA or was it independent?
Yeah, hell, who knows what he was. I'm not sure he knew. He was a frustrated wrestler, I know that, and of course he never tried to get in the ring as long as we were there. But after we left, I understand he tried his hand in the ring and everything, and was bloody awful.
Yeah. You never worked for Vern, or very?
Well, I'm not as a team as the Assassins. I worked for Vern before I put the mask on. I worked on several shots for him.
But you guys mostly did the NWA in the South. So you think today, if you were out there with Vince today, you guys would still be the biggest thing, one of the biggest things in wrestling?
No, we would be the number one team in wrestling today, and that's not bragging. That's just fact. When you can back it up, it ain't bragging. Because there's no team up there today, not even Triple H and HBK. And believe me, I love Triple H to death because I played a large part in his training. And I love the guy to death, and the guy is one of the master workers left in our profession today. But even him and HBK as a team couldn't tie our shoelaces, and that's just a fact, because we had everything. We didn't have just one facet of tag team matches. We had it all, and we did it all well, extremely well.
Jody, the athletes are different today. They take these high-risk maneuvers. Do you think that's been a positive for the game?
No. The only reason it's been a positive for the game is because they take the kids that are doing all these high-risk maneuvers and so on, because if they don't do that, then they can't have a match because they don't know what the hell else to do. They have no psychology to their matches whatsoever. The reason they don't have any psychology to their matches is because they're not being taught any, because none of these developmental camps and everything have any trainers that know anything about psychology. And how in the hell, my old adage is, you cannot teach what you yourself do not know. And how in the hell are you going to take a guy that was never a great wrestler in the ring in their wrestling careers? He was none of these guys were ever great. None of them ever made the real big time. How in the hell are you going to take these guys and have them relay the key ingredient to all this young talent as to what they need to do and what they need to know to learn to become big-time superstars? Hell, if they knew that, they'd have done it for themselves.
Yeah. So the high-risk maneuver is a negative. The guys are getting injured. It's difficult, and we won't really discuss it, but you've worked to create new talent. How do you see the future of wrestling going past this point?
Well, I think it's going to slow down. Business-wise, I think it's already shown that. I think that the people that are in charge of these different wrestling companies, the larger wrestling companies, I think eventually they're going to wake up and realize that some of the personnel that they have in key positions that they're relying upon to do a good job and so on are bogus people that don't really know what the hell to do or when to do it. You know, and I think these people, they're living on borrowed time, actually, because when the bosses find out how little they really know and what a lousy job they're really doing, because the business is going to drop and the interest in TV ratings are going to go down, and so on, then maybe the bosses are going to wake up and find out there get some people in there that are qualified people, you know. And there's a lot of qualified people around, but they just don't happen to be in those key positions now.
Do you think having the qualified people alone would be enough, or do you think that the territories are gone, and they're long gone, but those were like kind of like the college football for young players coming up, where they could learn the craft and get a lot of experience?
Well, that's what they're hoping to do with their developmental systems, you know. But this is what I'm saying. You've got so many unqualified people in charge of so many different areas of the business now that nothing is being accomplished. And first of all, you got to. I defy anybody right now to show me one legitimate trainer working for any company that is teaching the psychology of our business. And without psychology of our business, talent will never, ever be able to reach their ultimate capacity as far as being a superstar is concerned. It cannot happen.
Jody, everybody talks about the psychology, and I kind of understand it, but I kind of don't. What part of that is really missing? Is it in the ring? Is it the interviews? Is it?
It's a combination of everything. You know, look, I can take any mediocre trainer can take a average to above average athlete and teach him the how. Okay, now what is the how? The how is the proper application of holds, the proper knowledge of holds, the proper escapes, okay? That's the easy part. Teaching them the 3 W's is the difficult part, and nobody teaches it because nobody damn sure knows it anymore. The 3 W's are what, when, and why. What to do, when to do it, and why in the hell are you doing it? Nobody knows that anymore. And that goes for not only your performances in the ring, that goes for your interviews and your outside the ring association with fans and your conduct and the whole thing. Wrestling is a game of human chess. And if you don't have that psychology, and if you're not planning yourself 3, 4, 5 moves ahead all the time, then all you're ever going to be is mediocre. You're just going to be another slab of meat on the goddamn meat wagon.
Do you think the what, when, and why is missing because of the talent, or do you think maybe the world's changed and people don't even care about what, when, and why's outside the ring anymore? You know what I mean?
They don't know whether they care or not because in the last 15 years they haven't been exposed to it, so they don't know what the hell. 90% of the fans today don't know what they're missing. The older fans, the 50-plus fans that saw some of the matches back as far as the 80s and even back farther than that, they remember it, they know what they're missing, and they can see the difference between what's going on now and what they saw back in those days, and they like what they saw back in those days much better.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I just wonder if the younger people today, if they even would want to bother with what, when, and why.
They don't know. Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Expose them. See, here's my bone of contention. They don't know what the hell they're missing because they've never seen one. They've never been exposed to it. The closest thing they've seen to it is a match that Triple H had with Benoit about 5 or 6 years ago when they went an hour on TV. Okay? That was a great. That's the best wrestling match I have seen ever in WWE. Okay. Now, the average wrestling fan doesn't know what the hell they're missing. They don't know that they're watching matches that have absolutely no psychology to them whatsoever. It's flip, flop, and fly, and no rhyme, no reason to anything that they're doing in there other than flip, flop, and fly. It's a lucha libre bullshit. Is exactly what it turns out to be. Now, like I said, the average fan today, they don't know what they're missing because the younger fans of today have never seen that. Subject them. Let them see a match or two that has got some psychology in it, and see how they respond to it.
When you
watch the Undertaker wrestle, watch Triple H, watch Heartbreak Kid, watch Kevin Nash, watch these guys when they're in the ring, and the people are getting exposed to a partial part of psychology, depending on who their opponents are. If they're in there with somebody of equal ability and everything, then you're going to see a great match. Undoubtedly, all you have to do is tell me who's in the ring against each other, and I can tell you if it's going to be a good match or if it's going to be a great match because of the psychology aspect involved.
Jody, do you think there's also obviously there is an overexposure issue where these guys are just on TV so much with the same talent over and over again that it becomes virtually impossible?
Yeah, but what they're trying to do now is they adhere to the old adage, out of sight, out of mind. God damn, if I'm not on TV all the time and everything, people are going to forget about me. Well, the big and established stars, they don't worry about that. It's the younger stars that are worried about that. They'd be on TV every night of the week for a whole hour if they possibly could, because they don't know the difference, because they've never been taught. That's the problem with the younger guys coming up. Anybody that's been in the business for 5 years or less and everything has really no clue or really no concept about what the business is really all about, because they haven't been taught it.
When you see TNA, which is the only potential competitor to WWE, have you evaluated the talent and what they're doing with it?
Some of the talent I have, yes. Some of the talent I think some of the talent they've got is great. Like Kevin Nash, I think to work the big man gimmick that he works and everything, he's a master at it. Kurt Angle's he's a master at what he does, and a couple of other guys are decent, So talent-wise, TNA is in the same boat that WWE is in. Some of the older guys that ain't going to be around for a hell of a lot longer. I don't give a damn what anybody says because the old body just goddamn wears out, And when these guys are gone, then the business, if the people that own the business don't wake up and they don't put some people in some key positions that start from ground zero, and that's the training centers that train these kids and to spit this new talent out and everything, if they don't start teaching them some psychology there, then in 5 years the industry is going to go down I won't say go down the tubes and everything, but the industry will never go back to anything that even resembles logic.
Do you think TNA is doing the most with what they have that they can do, or is it under unrealized potential?
Like everyone else, I think they have some unrealized potential down there, and to me, TNA is a whole lot like everybody else and everything. I think they got the people that are writing their storylines down there and everything should be tied to a post and horsewhipped.
Yeah,
because the character creation is totally is basically totally stupid, off the wall, and unbelievable. When anybody creates people like what the hell was that guy's name? The Boogeyman. My God. WWE had the Boogeyman up there, and what did he do? His biggest claim to fame, because this is basically all he could do, because he was otherwise damn helpless. He could sit there and eat a bunch of damn worms in front of people and make the people in the viewing audience gag and puke. Now, if that's creating interest and everything, I'll kiss your hind end.
Yeah, Jody, I was talking to Buck Robley about this yesterday, and I said, I really wonder, and we were talking specifically about TNA, why they allow the people who are making the booking decisions, why they even have them there in the first place. Has the industry changed as far as putting people in the right positions. Of course, in the 70s, you had Eddie Graham, who some of the guys might have had issues with, but obviously knew how to promote. Is there a different criteria to get those type of jobs today? It's more based on who you know than what you can actually do?
Yep. And what you're willing to put up with. If you're willing to put up with a incredibly large ration of crap and have all kinds of low-life jobs dumped in your lap that you respond to with great eagerness and enthusiasm, but that's the difference between the guys that are in a lot of key positions today and the guys that were in a lot of key positions back in my day. If they had guys like some of these people that are in key positions back in my day and everything, they would have lasted about a month, and then if somebody didn't beat their ass, they would have got fired because you needed productive people.
So if you had the people in the position of powers, for example, TNA today, if you put them back in time to the 70s or early 80s, you think that they'd run the promotion down back then as well, even though it was a more fertile ground for wrestling then?
Well, I mean, what are you talking about? You're talking about completely change of personnel, a complete change of personnel, or what? If you're talking about a complete change of personnel and you kick Vince Russo's ignorant ass out of there, yeah.
What I'm saying is, if you took Vince Russo and put him in charge of Georgia Championship Wrestling in 1979,
he'd have drove it right in the ground.
Period. Yeah, I just
without a doubt.
I really Vince, obviously number one billionaire, very successful. I wonder about TNA. They're behind. I don't know if they're making money. They're probably losing money. Why they allow the direction to stay as it is, and you, of course, still involved with the business to some extent. You must wonder the same thing. And like you said, maybe it's just who can kiss the posterior in the best way.
Well, I there are certain questions that I would like to have answered. And the one you just brought up is one of them. But I can't answer it because I don't know. And I have no idea why or what these people are thinking of. The only thing that I can think of is like a lot of these little small promotions around, that the people that are in positions of power in these different promotions and so on, they're doing it strictly as a power kick. They need to have their egos fed, and that's why, I'm the boss of TNA, or I'm the boss of this, or I'm the boss of that, and so on. And that's the only thing they get out of life, the only pleasure, or the only kicks they get out of life. Like a lot of these small promotions and everything. You got a guy that's got a couple of bucks and everything, and all of a sudden he opens up a company or a little promotion and everything, and the next thing you know, Jesus Christ, he's calling himself the world's champion. And there, under normal conditions, there was no way, shape, or form he could ever get his ass in the ring and have a match with any qualified promotion. The only way he could ever do it is start his own company, make himself the champion, and put himself on TV or in the ring or whatever. And that's the way it is, because there's, in most places you can't regulate stuff like that anyway. You can regulate promotions and make the demand that the promotions do certain things and adhere to certain rules and stuff, but you can't tell any promotion who they can feature and who the wrestlers are going to be. Jody, and that's what happens.
Jody, if TNA were to take like the great minds that are still left, yourself, Buck Robley, some of the others who still have a love for the business, do you think that they could be competitive with Vince? Get rid of Vince Russo and do things the right way, or do you think it'd be really pretty difficult?
Well, I think that anybody can compete with anybody if the product is a first-class product. And the first thing you'd have to do to improve your product and everything, and the first thing you'd have to do to become competitive is improve your product. So it's going to take, they're not just a fledgling company now. They've been around several years. So people are what fans they do have are used to seeing the style of stuff that they produce. So to change it over and everything means you're going to have to change your fan base somewhat. But the fan base that you would be changing it to, doing it the proper way, the fan base that you'll be changing it to and everything is going to be a far more loyal fan base, because let's face it, I don't give a damn what anybody says, and they can do all these surveys And I know when I was with WCW, my God, they were spending money hand over fist like a bunch of drunken sailors, trying to get these companies, or not trying to, but hiring these companies to do these idiotic surveys, And every answer to the survey that they were conducting and everything, I called, and me and a couple other guys that had been around the business for a while, we already called it. We already knew what the answer was because we knew the wrestling business. But yet they wouldn't rely upon us. They wanted to go out and get these companies. I remember WCW paid $500,000 one time to a company to find out that wrestling fans, that the age group from 18 to 35, male age group 18 to 35, spent the most money. Hell, I could have told anybody that knows anything about wrestling could have told them that.
Any
they
guy
spent $500,000 to find that out.
Jody, any guy that's a guy knows between 18 and 35 is when you're loose with the dollar. Then you get older.
Sure.
Yeah.
Plus, that's your productive years anyway. Jesus God.
When you get older, you get scared. You stop spending. I mean, and
that's right.
They spent $500,000 for that. Beautiful, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, they're not the only ones that did stupid things like that, or that do stupid things like that. I mean, both wrestling companies, the two major companies today, and everything. That's the people that they cater to, the male crowd, 18 to 35. But my God, the 18 to 35 crowd, as far as wrestling fans are concerned, that only constitutes about 32 to 35% of all wrestling fans. What about all the people from 35 to 55 or 35 to 65? What about all the old-time wrestling fans? If all these companies had any brains and had anybody that had any brains running them and everything, we're not going to go back. Nobody's going to go back to wrestling the way it was back in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s and so on. But damn, today, why not have some variety in there? You got every wrestler that goes out there looks like he's chiseled out of granite. They, all steroided up and pumped up, and so pumped up they can't hardly walk around or move and everything. And there's no parity. Nobody looks any different. Nobody has a different or separate look, even though they dress them in these idiotic-looking costumes and so on. The bodies and everything still look basically the same. So why not have some parity? Why not have some guys go out there, and do different things? I'm not saying you to quit the flip-flop and fly stuff, to cut it out altogether, because there are some people that regardless of how much any amount of psychology you put into a match, there are fans out there that are going to want to see the flip-flop and fly lucha libre type stuff. So give that to them, but also give some matches to some people that have got some logic to them and some basic common sense, and quit insulting the intelligence of the wrestling fans, because wrestling fans are not stupid. For years they tried to depict wrestling fans as illiterate, one-tooth, tobacco-chewing bunch of hillbillies, inbred hillbillies, I might add, and so on. And that's not the wrestling fans. That never has been, and it damn sure isn't the image of the wrestling fans now. Wrestling fans come from all sorts of, or all walks of life, and all sorts of backgrounds, religious as well as educational backgrounds and industrial backgrounds.
Yeah, Jody, I agree with you. I don't like it when people portray wrestling fans as being, illiterate and stupid. And if you go to any NFL game on Sunday, you'll see guys dressed up as, in all kinds of costumes, and people don't say things about football fans. But
yeah, really,
it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
that
you guys out there in sub-zero weather, and all they're wearing is a pair of shorts. Their bodies are exposed in sub-zero weather and everything. I mean, let's face it, that's a true fan and all that, and football is lucky to have them like that and so on. But I mean, how smart can that be, right?
Right, that's a smart fan, and we wrestling fans are a bunch of illiterates, like you said. Jody, if you had a position of power in TNA, would you go? They seem to be going the WWE reject route, or guys that Vince lets go.
No, I'd go. I mean, there's certain guys that I think that hold value, but Cactus Jack sure in the hell ain't one of them. And some of these other guys, they're anyway. What I would do is I would go to developmental system, and I would make sure that the developmental system is run properly by the proper people, and so those kids were taught the right things that they need to know, so they can reached their ultimate goal of being a superstar. And you cannot be a superstar if you don't know the who, the what, the when, and why. You know.
Jody, you mentioned Mick Foley. Do you think he was? Do you think, as it turns out, he was a major negative for wrestling with all the stunts and off the top of the cage and the teeth falling out?
No, that was just his way of trying to survive because he didn't have anything else. You know, I like Mick as a person. I like the guy. He's a nice guy, and all that and everything. His work was never any good. I remember when he was with WCW, he took a big. We had that entrance ramp that was about 6.5 to 7 feet high that went from the stage into the ring. You know, and he had one of them wild, goofy ass falls in a count anywhere in the building matches and everything, and he took a backdrop off the damn ramp onto the concrete floor. There was no padding or nothing there. It was strictly concrete. So, you know, I mean, and he came to me about 3 days later. He said, "God damn," he said, "you know," he says, I've been peeing blood."
Oh God.
I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "That bump you took," I said, "you probably bruised your kidneys." And I said, "That's why you're passing blood." He said, "You think?" He said, "Well, what can I do?" And I said, "Well, for the first thing you do," I said, "you need to quit taking those bumps." He said, "Well, no." He said, "That's my style." I said, "Mick," I called him Jack. I said, "Jack, wouldn't it just be a hell of a lot easier to learn to work?" You know? And he looked at me like, "Oh, gee, I never thought of that."
I don't know. It seems to me when he went off the top of the cage, one of the great feature moments in the history of wrestling, as far as I can't believe what I just saw. It seems that from that point on, the bar had to go up, and just a difficult trend. You guys, the Assassins, did it simply with just the subtle movements in the ring, your interviews. There was a mystique about you, and like you said, that seems to be lost today. That mystique.
Well, you know, everybody, first of all, everybody wants to be the wrestling fan's best buddy, okay? And there's an old adage in wrestling, and there's an old adage for the old-timers that are left in Hollywood. I don't mean these dips that are out there now, the younger ones. I'm talking about the old-timers that are out there that really know Hollywood, and I'm talking about the old-timers that know wrestling and everything. The old adage is familiarity breeds contempt, okay? These people pay to see you because they've envisioned you as a big star. But if you're out there rubbing elbows with them and you become very familiar with them and so on, and you become just a good old boy next door, then you're no longer a big star. You're just a good old boy next door. So why in the hell would they have to go pay 30 or 40 or 50 bucks to see you and to see you perform when, hell, I just go next door and see my good old buddy and we'll sit down and have a brew. It's the same principle. You know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at things. What you're saying is if you try too hard to make the fans think that you're one of them,
too much familiarity, if you too damn much socializing. It's okay to have an autograph session and everything. Lou Thez never refused to do anybody's autograph, but nobody ever got close to Thez. That's why nobody ever got close to the Assassins. And I would sign autographs for any kid that came up to me that was polite and asked me for an autograph. I gave him an autograph. But I didn't sit and chit-chat with him. I didn't pat him on his little head and tell him, say your prayers and eat your vitamins. I signed his autograph book, and that was it. You know, you can't become too familiar with your fans. If you do, you're killing yourself, for crying out loud.
Wow, that's really an interesting way to look at things, and I've heard people say things like that before. But you really put a stamp on it. In that, if you're a star, you got to be the star, right?
That's it. You know, you can't be good old Joe next door. You got to remain the star, and that means you have to remain somewhat the mystique. That was what we always had. We had the mystique because nobody ever saw our faces. Sometimes we had to drive 8, 10, 12 miles away from the arena before we ever took the masks off because people were trying to follow us and stuff, you know. But nobody ever knew what the hell, basically what we looked like and everything, and that helped with the mystique of the Masked Assassins.
Well, and I think as a fan growing up in the 70s, if I had ever seen you outside of the ring area with the mask on, of course, you'd be like a little bit intimidated and probably afraid. Whereas with a lot of today's talent, like you said, they make themselves so available to the fans, you probably just want to just walk right up to them.
Sure.
And,
well, I mean, look at the difference between the heat that we had back in those days, which people were, hell, we've had people shoot at us, we had people try to destroy our cars, we had people try to lynch us, and that's actually God honest truth. I think if you read my book, you read that excerpt in there about what happened to us in Hogansville, Georgia that night.
Yeah.
When they actually physically tried to lynch us. You know, if it hadn't been for that old cop, or that old sheriff there, they probably would have. I mean, after I'd emptied my 45 into about 9 of them, but the same token is we had the kind of heat. It wasn't, the kind of heat the guys have got now is that, oh, boo, you're a bad guy. But we had that you dirty SOB type of heat, we want to kill you. And tried to on several occasions.
Yeah.
See, if some of these people today in wrestling had the same type of heat that we had back then and everything, they'd quit the business altogether and go back home to mama.
Yeah. When you would go into a restaurant back in the day, did anyone ever recognize you, or because of the mask, you're totally anonymous?
I had, on a couple of occasions, I had people suspect, but it wasn't so much. What it was the way I walked. I had a kind of a distinctive walk, I guess. That's what I was told anyway.
Yeah.
And people would see me come in, and I was always a pretty good-sized guy, and they see a pretty good-sized guy come in, and of course back then Tom and I always dressed. I mean, we dressed professionally. We always had a suit and a tie on. There was none of this coming in goddamn flip-flops and Bermuda shorts and stuff. None of that crap. We were professionals. We dressed and acted like professionals.
So, Jody, you must have thought outside the ring, boy, I'm glad that we have this masked gimmick, because I can get out of the ring, and aside from my walk and maybe my body type, they don't know who I am.
That played a great deal in it. But mostly, in my case, is I don't have the type of face that creates a great deal of. Now I do now since I'm older and all that. But back then, I wasn't. I'm not bragging, but I wasn't that bad a looking guy. But I had a kind of a little round moon face and everything, and I like to laugh a lot and smile a lot and everything, and that showed in my face. So I wasn't the type. I didn't have the type of face that people could easily get mad at. You understand?
Oh, okay.
So putting that mask on and everything hid my face and everything, and helped me be able to get the type of heat desired.
Jody, is it difficult once you got out of the ring? I've heard a lot of the guys have told me that the injuries really start to catch up with you. Did they catch up with you while you were in the ring, or when you got out of the ring, or have you been fortunate?
No, they got me.
They got you.
They'll always get you. You can't run from them, and you can't hide from them.
Just the way it is, huh?
Cold, hard fact of life.
Yeah. Was it more after you got out of the ring? I've heard people say once you're out of the wrestling for a year, your body starts to change, and it
deteriorates quickly.
It does. It's not so accepting of the pain as it was when you were in the ring every night.
Yeah, it's more subject to it. Actually, because when you're in the ring every night, you're keeping the blood pumping and all that and everything, well, what made me get out of the ring and everything was I took a bump out of the ring and hit the edge of the apron, and the ring that I was in, when they put the ring together, they left a couple of boards exposed on the edge, and they didn't have anything covering the boards except the canvas. There was no padding or anything.
Oh, boy.
I took a bump over the top rope, and I landed with a small on my back, and I hit the edge of that board and everything, and I fractured the 4th and 5th lumbar. And that was it for me, And then I was laid up I was in bed for 2 months. Couldn't hardly get out, and they wanted to operate on me, but they'd already operated on my wife, and I saw what they'd done to her and everything, and I said, nah, you ain't cutting me, brother. So anyway, I healed up enough to get my ass on the phone and called Jim Hurd. He told me to come down to WCW, down at the CNN Center, and sit down and talk, and I did, and he hired me. Hello?
Was Jim Hurd as bad as people have said as far as just competence running the WCW?
Oh, he had a lot of wild ideas and so on, but hell, he wasn't any worse than any of the rest of them and everything, and he was damn good to me. So I'm not going to knock Jim Hurd by any means.
Okay.
You know, he had some wild ideas and everything, and actually some of them were kind of funny and everything. Hell, he wanted to do the hunchbacks and have these guys dressed up in these hunchback costumes and everything, and the deal was, like, because of that hump on their back and everything, you couldn't fit them. You know?
Yeah.
God, that was funny.
So maybe looking back at time over the last 20 years, maybe he was just a little bit ahead of his time as far as.
Well, I'll tell you, if somebody came up with that gimmick right now, one of these companies would do it. I'd damn sure guarantee that.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah. You know, and like I say, I think I went over the thing in my book and everything about he protected me, and I appreciated it. You know, and that's why I'm him and still and always will be loyal to the guy.
Jody, the book is a classic. I've read it twice. Something about me and these books, these wrestling books, I just can't read them once. You got to go back and read them again. It's got some very unique stories about the South. As you mentioned, the lynching, the near lynching, from the 60s and the 70s. How do we get a copy of the book?
You can go to www.crowbarpress.com. That's www.crowbarpress.com.
And Scott Teal, the great Scott Teal, helped you put the book together. Did you guys write the book?
Yeah. He didn't. I did. He just did the editing on it and stuff, you know, and stuff. He asked questions and in certain areas and so on. But everything in that book is true, accurate, and exactly as I remember it.
Easily one of the top 5 wrestling books that's been written, and very enjoyable for even a casual fan. And you could just put into any search engine, whatever happened to wrestling. It'll take you to Scott Teal's website, crowbarpress.com. Jody, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Same here, and let's do it again.
Thank you so much, and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.